D&D, the world's greatest role-playing game. I've been playing for years now, and nothing gets me more excited than making a badass character or monster. And video games and anime provide the perfect inspiration for this. I mean, look at this stuff. But then you look at the game, and what you get is something like 4 Elements Monk?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Seriously, what am I even supposed to do with this? 4 key points for Burning Hands? Come on!
We'll have to make some major changes around here.
Welcome to the table. My name is Ian, and this is Incendium D&D. Today, we're gonna hack Dungeons and Dragons. Item number, SCP-966. Object class, Euclid. Special containment procedures. MTF Iota-1 Dream Hunters and MTF Iota-2 Air Chasers are to regularly be on the lookout for news of sudden, violent human deaths related to sleep deprivation in order to find and neutralize remaining wild instances of SCP-966. The 4 specimens of SCP-966, 3 males designated SCP-966-1-3 and -4, and 1 female designated SCP-966-2, acquired by the Foundation, must be contained in a 10 by 10 meter room made of steel lined with lead and located on site, redacted. 2 security cameras with infrared filters and infrared sensitive film are to be installed inside of the room. Each specimen of SCP-966 is to be fed with 20 kilograms of meat every month. Welcome back to D&D Hacks, our homebrew series on Incendium D&D. Last time we turned SCP-939, the creature with many voices, into a unique D&D stat block that we can use in our games. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. It was strong, it was scary, and most importantly, it was balanced. I promise you won't be disappointed. For those of you who are new to the SCP universe in general, here's what you missed. If you're already familiar with it, skip to the timestamp on the screen now, or click the link in the description below. Dating back to 2007, the Creative Commons universe of the SCP Foundation catalogs a multitude of monsters, items, and phenomena which pose variable threats to human society. These anomalous objects are designated as SCPs and given a number which represents their order in which they were found. These can range from dangerous to cuddly and are classified in terms of difficulty to contain. Their powers range from reality distortion to indestructibility to being the literal embodiment of happiness, and the secret global organization, only known as the SCP Foundation, has taken up the daunting task of protecting our world from them, and them from our world, by any means necessary. Think Illuminati, but modern and scientific, rather than arcane and mystic. Multiple tragedies have been resolved or outright prevented thanks to their hard work, but as more and more SCPs are discovered, the threat of complete extinction continues to grow. Dungeons and Dragons is a TTRPG in which you can do anything, and you, as the DM, get to make decisions on what kind of monsters, NPCs, or even gods appear in your world. And SCPs make for some great inspiration. Generally, they fit within a horror or mystery-style game, but they can be comedic or tragic as well. Above all, the sheer anomalousness of these creatures leaves room for a whole new world of storytelling in Dungeons and Dragons. Statues which can break your neck in the blink of an eye. An old man who drags you into his pocket dimension to torture you with a series of mazes and visions. Giant reptiles made of hatred incarnate who cannot be killed. With a roster like this, it's no wonder that, no matter where I look, I almost never find someone who's been willing to bring SCPs into a campaign. But that all ends today because we're going to be converting another SCP into a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons monster. Roll the footage.
Oh, Jesus! Christ! Woo! Okay. All right. Oh, and there's the 3rd one. Great.
SCP-966 is relatively easy to contain, but difficult to capture. The Foundation keeps its eyes on all channels searching for any potential instances of the creature. 966 takes the form of an emaciated humanoid with needle-sharp teeth and long, thin claws at the end of its 5 fingers. These claws are razor-sharp, but very brittle and easily broken. They stand at an average of 1.5 meters in height and are digitigrade. This means that they walk on their toes like a cat would walk on their paws. They have relatively weak muscles and hollow bones, making them unfit for direct combat, hence why they tend to stalk their prey instead of taking them down head-on. To accomplish this, they have 2 very special characteristics. SCP-966 is only visible in the infrared spectrum, that is, light wavelengths 700 to 900 nanometers, making them impossible to see without equipment or, in our case, magic. They can also emit a nigh undetectable form of radiation, which inflicts their prey with insomnia. Unable to sleep, their prey wears themselves out over time, until they become too sick or exhausted to fight back. That's when these instances will make their move, using their claws to kill and consume their unfortunate victim, invisible all the while. Can you imagine that? What a terrible way to die. Slowly cut into pieces while helpless to do anything due to your own exhaustion. I warned you, some of these creatures could be gruesome. These monsters aren't especially tough to kill, but recognizing their presence in the first place is part of the challenge. If the party can put together the clues correctly, this SCP will make for a great mystery monster. Before we get into it though, let me know what other SCPs I should make into monsters for D&D. I'm currently working on Series 1 and I'm taking all suggestions. The only caveat is that they have to be able to be neutralized or killed. We're not trying to make any more Tarrasques here. I won't lie to you, this monster is going to be deadly, but not in the traditional sense. As I've said in the past, making a compelling and balanced homebrew monster isn't easy. Too many immunities, too high of an AC, or just plain unfair features all ruin the game for your players. One of the best ways to keep the encounter balanced is to make use of pre-existing 5th edition stat blocks of a similar challenge rating. Very few games make it to 20th level or late game, so we want a challenge rating that's reasonably going to see play. Pack tactics are unnecessary with this monster, as since they're already permanently invisible, they'll get advantage on their attacks anyway. Taking their hunting strategy into account, I've settled on the Invisible Stalker, a CR creature, for modeling this entity. In their default Faerunian lore, invisible stalkers are known for being summoned by evil or vengeful casters to be set upon their enemies, usually the party. They're elementals with an AC of 14, an HP of 104, and a fly speed of 50 feet with the hover feature. All of this sounds almost exactly like what we're looking for in SCP-966, but we're going to change that speed to 30 feet and remove its flight. These creatures are land-based. Additionally, these aren't elementals, they're more like aberrations in their description, so we'll change that as well. For languages, we'll let it understand Common while being able to speak rudimentary deep speech. Of course, the only thing it talks about is consuming its prey, and there's no need to learn any other language when their target will be dead soon anyway. For their basic stats, and considering the wiki file, these creatures clearly aren't too strong, intelligent, or charismatic. No, with brittle and sharp claws like theirs, they will need to be rather dexterous, which certainly helps them take the hide action as well.
Don't worry, buddy. You're doing fine. I won't let you blow this. What kind of place is this?
If you didn't know, the hide action requires you to roll a stealth roll, and then that is contested by the enemy's passive perception if they didn't see you hide in the first place. And if we're going off of the SCP file alone, we might say they weren't especially fortified or perceptive either, but we can't put bad stats in every category, so let's make these secondary ability scores Wisdom and Constitution. Invisibility is such an extremely useful ability for monsters, which drives up this encounter's difficulty so much already, so we won't be adding any saving throws. Additionally, if the party wants to use area of effect spells like Fireball or Fairy Fire, all the better. For their skills, we'll allow them proficiency in Perception to locate their prey, and Stealth to stalk their prey. Imagine what it might be like in a dark room trying to fight these creatures as they slip back and forth, seemingly able to attack from any side they choose. This would be nightmarish, especially if you use optional rules like facing. We don't want to go overboard here, but because of my personal guidelines for monster building, I'm going to add a few resistances, immunities, and vulnerabilities. The invisible stalker, being an elemental, is resistant to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Our creature is not elemental, but this still seems reasonable for a CR6 aberration. For immunities, only one damage type, and that will be poison. It's a common enough immunity and reflects their eat-anything nature when it comes to prey. This one will also have condition immunities, including frightened, prone, due to its hover, and charmed. Lastly, we'll give it vulnerability to fire damage. In the file, we see that these creatures can be seen when burned. This justifies its hit pool size and gives players a way out if they don't have sea invisibility or fairy fire prepared. The invisible stalker deals relatively low damage compared to some of other monsters of its CR, and SCP-966 will follow that lead. 2d6 plus modifier damage will work just fine for our purposes, especially if we consider we may have more than one of them in an encounter. Now, the only thing left is to consider its special ability. Besides being invisible, the radiation this creature can choose to emit can be devastating to a party without access to greater restoration or remove curse. With the creature so dependent on long rests as it currently is played, insomnia is a nightmare. So here's how I'm going to run it. Sleep no more. SCP-966 emits an invisible pulse of energy covering a 30-foot radius originating from it. Creatures under a protection from evil and good spell are unaffected by this feature. When a creature enters this area for the first time, they must succeed on a DC 15 Constitution saving throw. If the creature succeeds, nothing happens, and the creature is immune to this effect for 24 hours. If they fail, they become afflicted with insomnia. A creature with this condition gains no benefits from a long rest, and suffers 1 point of exhaustion for each consecutive day without one. This effect lasts until SCP-966 is killed, or if it is removed by the Greater Restoration or Remove Curse spell, or similar magic. We've used an aura effect before when making SCP-939. I had considered making this an action for 966 to take, but after some discussion with my co-creator John, I felt the aura would be equally balanced and reflect the lore better. Not to mention that there are at least 3 spells which can help to counter it as a whole. This feature may seem familiar to you, however, and for that, I direct you towards the Night Hag's stat block. The Night Hag is a monster of CR5 and has a special action it can take called Nightmare Haunting once per day. While on the ethereal plane, it can touch an individual on the material plane and inflict terrible dreams and visions on them while they rest. If this touch persists for an hour or more, the target loses the benefits of its rest and has their hit point maximum reduced by 1d10. If they die from this, the target's soul is trapped inside the Hag's soul bag. Honestly, because the Night Hag also removes the benefit of a long rest, it probably should also cause exhaustion, which would increase this CR a fair amount. This is why I explicitly state in SCP-966's ability that it causes exhaustion and only exhaustion to avoid any confusion. In summary, I think I'm fairly satisfied with how this monster came out. Making this stat block reminded me of how truly terrifying creatures with permanent invisibility can be, and why spells like Fairy Fire and Sea Invisibility are never a bad idea to have on hand. Remember, as a DM, it's your job to lay the groundwork for this encounter. It can be easy for things to go wrong here. This monster's favorite terrain is likely an urban setting, but really you could have them appear anywhere there are adventurers. I picture an encounter with a group of SCP-966 going something like this. A party member is unable to sleep at night, so much so that they feel exhausted by daybreak. Clues begin to form in the night, strange footsteps leading to and from the party member's bed, occasionally disappearing completely. The wizard has their suspicions and casts protective wards on the party member to no avail, because the effect has already been done. After the second night, knowing it must be some sort of monster, the party hides in the same room as the afflicted member, and that's when they hear the abyssal whispers in the room and take up their arms. The rest is up to them. Will they uncover the true nature of this foe? So what do you think? SCPs are often horrifying, unkillable creatures with inexplicable abilities. Maintaining the balance of the game while keeping true to their nature and theme is an incredible challenge for any dungeon master. That's why most people just keep these worlds separate, but I think they can still serve as great inspiration for encounters. And as long as we combine their unique features while weighing out the rest of the stat block, you and your party are guaranteed to have a great time against them. Thanks for watching my take on SCP-966, the Sleep Killer. Happy hunting, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.